This video will go through compound assignment operators and unary operators. So we'll start by just a little bit of a review. Remember that we have our basic mathematic operators, and there are 5 of them. We have our very important assignment operator, the equal sign, and compound assignment operators, which is what we're going to look at today, is a combination of those two. So you have, for each of our mathematic operators, you have what is called a compound assignment operator. And what it is it's a simpler way or an easier way or a shortcut way of combining a variable, a mathematic operation that you want to perform with that variable and some other value or values, and that gets stored back into that variable. So what exactly do I mean? Or what process do I go through? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to evaluate whatever is on the right-hand side of the equal sign. You're going to ignore the name of the variable and anything that's on the left-hand side of the equal sign. It's kind of like thinking of everything that's on the right-hand side is inside a set of parentheses in a regular equation. Then you're going to apply that math operator with the variable and the result from the right side of the equal sign, and it gets stored back into that original variable that's on the left. And an important note, if the variable that we're using appears on the right-hand side, we're going to use that original value. And we'll go through some examples with this. But if the variable appears both on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, use its starting value when you're evaluating on the right-hand side. So kind of an example of each of them. If I have some variable and I say variable plus equals 3, you would interpret that as saying variable equals variable plus 3. So it's just a shortcut way of saying I want to add 3 to whatever is currently in that variable. I can do it with minus. And like I said, if there's more than one thing on the right-hand side of that equal sign, I'm going to evaluate that first. So it's just like putting it inside of a set of parentheses. So what would happen first here would be the 3 times 6, and then I would do variable minus 3 times 6. The answer of that math operation goes back into variable. And I can do it with variable times equals something, variable divide by equals, and here's an example where variable shows up on both sides. So if variable started out with a value of like 2, then this would say 2 divided by 30 times 2. So I'm going to do 30 times 2, which is 60, and then I would do 2 divided by 60, which would give me 0, and I'd store that back into my variable. So let's look at some actual examples with some values in them. So I have 2 variables up here at the top. Notice they're both ints, so all my answers will be ints. So x plus equals y is the same as saying, oops, easy to see. It's the same as saying x equals x plus y. So to write it out, so that's like saying x equals 8 plus 10, which of course is 18, so then x equals 18. Here's an example, y times equals 342 mod y, so y equals y times 342 mod y, so y equals 10 times 342 mod 10. That's going to give me 2 times 10 equals 20, so y equals 20. And then if I'm using any changes to that have happened to my variables, so x now equals 18, y now equals 20, you go in here, x is now going to equal 18 divided by 42 minus 20 mod 10 times 2. Remember my PEMDAS and order of operations. Look what's inside the parentheses. I'm going to do this modulus first. And it's going to give me a result of 0. And then I would have that times 2, which gives me 0. So I have 42 minus 0 inside of the parentheses there, which gives me 42. And then I'm taking 18 divided by 42. That's what I'm going to store in x. So x equals 0. Remember, whole number, I will not have any decimals in my answer. So those are some basic examples going through with compound assignment operators. Next, we have two unary operators. And these are operators that use a variable and no additional information to change the value within the variable. And there's just two of them. We have the plus plus and minus minus. Plus plus adds 1 to whatever the variable is, and minus minus is going to subtract 1 from that variable. There are two ways that I can use these operators. I can either put the plus plus before the variable or after the variable, or the minus minus before the variable or after the variable. And there is a slight but very important difference in these two, in the use of the unary operator, if it's before or after. It's important to understand the difference, but know that on the AP exam, you only have to worry about the operator showing up after the variable. So, taking a look at an example here. Very simple. I start out with two variables, and a lot of times I like to create a little table over here to keep track of my variables as I'm working through problems. Even having programmed for over 20 years now, I still draw out my variables like this. So A started is 10, B started is 20. This is the same, it's a shortcut way of saying A equals A plus 1. You're going to learn programmers are lazy. They like to do shortcuts whenever possible. So A equals A plus 1, so I'm just adding 1, so A becomes 11. And B minus minus is the same as saying B equals B minus 1. So 20, I subtract 1, is now going to have a value of 19. And then if the plus plus A and the minus minus B are the only things here, it's doing the same thing here. This is the same as saying A equals A plus 1. It's the same as saying B equals B minus 1. So I would add an extra one here, subtract again here, and at the end of these 5 lines of code, A has a value of 12, B has a value of 18. And we call this tracing code. Whenever you're going through, evaluating the values as you go through something, I'm tracing my code. So some examples of the difference of using it before and versus after. So if I have two variables here, C equals 5, and then I have D, this is the same as saying D equals C, but because the plus plus comes first, then I have to add the 1 before I assign that value. So the first thing that will happen, we'll see C is going to become 6, and then D is going to get the same value that C has, so D will also be 6. Now if I put the plus plus afterwards, that's like saying F equals E, and then I'm going to add to E. So because the plus plus comes after, I use the original value in E first. After I'm done using it, then I'm going to add 1 to it. So F will become 5, and E will become 6. So very important difference here, that at the end of this line of code, note that these two variables are not the same. At the end of this code, the two variables are the same. And again, this type will be on the AP exam. This will not be on the AP exam. And you'll see that we will use plus plus a lot, especially when we get to working with loops. And just some short examples kind of going through all of that on both sides. So I'm going to go through and trace my code. Num is 10, val is 6, num plus equals val times, so num equals num plus, and then all of this goes inside parentheses. 6 times 6 divided by 4 plus num, notice that the plus plus comes afterwards, so I use my original value for num. So what happens in here first? 6 times 6 is 36, and I have divided by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9, plus 10 gives me 19. 10 plus 19 is going to have num equals 29. But then don't forget this plus plus, so num became 29, and then I have a plus plus, so num becomes 30. So this 30 comes from the plus plus. The 29 comes from evaluating the rest of the problem. And here I have val equals val times 5 divided by 2 times 9 minus 3 times num, which is now 30, mod val, which is currently 6. This minus minus will come into play later. So what do I do first? What's inside the parentheses? 5 divided by 2 gives me 2, times 9 gives me 18, minus, I have to evaluate 3 times 30 is 90, mod 6 is going to give me 0. That makes that easy. 6 times 18, that's going to give me 108. So val equals 108. And then don't forget this minus minus that happens after I'm done. Val results in a value, or final value of 107. So, some examples of compound assignment operators and unary operators. The biggest things to remember is that whatever's on this right-hand side, it appears like it's in parentheses, so I'm going to evaluate everything first, and then I'll go through and plug in the value. If the original value appears on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, I use whatever the value is before I started evaluating. And then remember that plus plus and minus minus are going to either add 1 or subtract 1. So I'm going through that. Good luck.